welcome back. Today's part 3 of our series in creating your own ChatGPT interface using Blazor. So we've got a few things we're going to go through today. I've made a few items on the issues board. So we're going to go through, we're going to remove the project defaults. So we're just going to get rid of all the default pages and services that came with that Blazor application. We'll go ahead, we'll remove the Electron menu. I don't know if you noticed in the app, it had its own little menu in there. And then we'll make a start on adding the chat page. Some other items, if any of you guys want to have a look, need to create an icon for the application. So if any of you guys have got ideas, you can head over to this issue and just post some ideas there or some links to icons. And then these are some more things that we'll do in future episodes. So I think for now, if we dive in, what we're going to tackle first is just removing all the project defaults, removing the Electron menu, and then we'll move on to adding the chat page. So if we jump into Visual Studio, let's make a start on the first item, which was removing all the project defaults. So what I'm going to do is just go through and remove all the stuff that we don't need. So we've got this counter page, we don't need that, we don't need this fetch data page. We'll keep the index page, we'll rename that to chat in a minute. All these data classes we'll just remove for now, we don't need any of that. That's fine. The other thing I want to do is just remove this nav menu for now. We'll come back to this at some point. I don't think we need it for right now though. I might actually just delete it to make our own one. And the survey prompt, we'll get rid of that as well. Okay. And then what we'll do with this this index page is let's just rename this to chat. That's going to be our main page. I'm going to create a folder just to put this page in because we're going to create a few components in a minute. So we'll move that chat page into there. Okay, let's just change this to chat and we'll go work on this in a minute. I think that's okay. Let's just double check. I've probably got a couple of errors we just need to correct over here. Yeah, so we don't need to register this anymore. We can get rid of that. And then, yes, we can just get rid of this using. What we can do is just remove all these unnecessary usings quickly. Alright, perfect. Let's just save that. And what I'm going to do quickly is just run this. Just double check it still works for us. Okay, perfect. So that's loaded up and it's got straight to the index. That's perfect. I think what we would do as well is just get rid of this nav bar at the top here. I think that's, is that in the layout? I think it might just be in. Yeah, let's just get rid of that. Alright, perfect. The other thing we wanted to do, so that was item 1 on the agenda, was just remove this Electron menu. So when we run the Electron app, you'll notice we had that menu in the Electron app. But what we can do, if we go to here, when we add a window manager, we can specify some options. So we can say new browser window options. And what we can do in here, if we just import that namespace quickly, let's just tidy this up a little bit. Yeah, so in here, there's various options. For now, we're just going to set the auto hide menu bar equals true. So if you want to bring it up, you still can do. I think you just need to press Alt. Let's just do this. Okay, and now what should happen, I'll show you quickly. If we were to run the Electron, I'll just show you quickly. Okay, perfect. So that started up. So you can see now we don't have that menu that we had there yesterday. So now it's just full screen app of exactly what we want to see over here. All right, perfect. So let's close that. And then what I'll do quickly is just commit these changes we've just done. I'm just going to create a new branch here quickly. So remove template defaults, and we hit the Electron menu. Okay, perfect. So we'll do that. We'll just push that up quickly so we've got it. Cool. So I think, yeah, next steps really is to get this chat page working. So some of you may have seen this already in the beginning of the video of one of my other videos I've done, but we're going to need to add the OpenAI client library. So if we go into NuGet, search for openai.net, the library should come up over here. We'll install that. And then what we need to go and do is just go specify our API key. So what I'll do quickly is just make a placeholder here in our standard app config. We'll call this OpenAI and API key. I'm going to leave it blank in here because it's not recommended to put your secrets in here. The best thing to do if you want to store secrets while you're doing your development is to go to manage user secrets, and then we can put that section in here, and I'll grab my API key and I'm just going to pop it in there quickly. Okay, perfect. So I've saved my API key to the user secrets file. The next thing we need to do is just come into here and add the OpenAI library. So if we go using openai.net, then what we need to do is add the services. So we'll go builder.services.add OpenAI services. And within here, we just need to specify the options for our API key. So we can say API key. Yes, we'll set our API key over here, and then what we want to do is grab it from the builder configuration. So we'll go builder configuration, OpenAI, API key, and that should then be set for us. And then what we can do is head over to our chat page, and we can say inject OpenAI service. Our service, right, and if we just import this namespace, that should be good. Right, then we should be good to go and start using that. Okay, so I think what we'll start by doing is just defining a few models that we're going to use on this page. I'm just going to create a new folder here called models. I'm going to implement this in a quick and dirty way just so that we can get it up and running. And then once I've done that, I think what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll start refactoring it and show you how we can tidy this up and abstract it all a bit more. But for now, we'll just get it up and running so I can show you how it works. So I think what we're going to need some classes to just hold the current conversation, and we will need a class that just holds the current search text that we're putting in, and probably some properties just for the system and the assistant text. So I think if we start by creating our conversation, and then what we're going to want is a conversation item. And this item, we're just going to have two properties on it for now. We'll have one called user, so we know whether it's us or the AI that's speaking. So we'll call that user, and then we'll just call this message. And then our conversation is just going to have a list of these conversation items for now. And we'll keep this really simple. Conversation history. And then the other class we're going to want is, we can call this search info, so I suppose what we're typing in the input boxes. So we'll call this search model. And what we'll do on here is we'll just have our search text for what we're searching for, and the other thing that we want probably is we'll put the system context, and we'll add another property for the assistant context. Just rename that quickly. Okay, so I mean that should be enough for us to get started with. Let's just move these over into their own files. I'll leave that one together, makes sense. And then if we head back over to our chat page, let's just get rid of all of this stuff. So we're going to need a code block here. And what we'll do is we'll just define our two classes we've done. So we want a search model. Let's just import that. I'll just initialize these here, and we want the conversation new conversation. I just want to double check if we just initialize this list. There we go. Okay, perfect. And I think what we'll do quick is let's just add a method so that we can call the API. So and then what we'll do, I'm just going to copy some code over from the examples page. Just saves me typing all of this code. So what we want to do is essentially this. So we want to call the OpenAI service. Not named that correctly. There we go. And then what we need is we need a list of messages to send through on this. So we're going to need a list of messages. One will be the system, one will be the assistant. So this will be the system context that we defined, and this will be the assistant context. Let's just tidy that up a little bit. The number of results, I'm just going to hard code these for now, and we'll make this I think the max tokens is like 4,000 and something on the new GPT model. But we'll come back to that. And then what we'll do over here is go this conversation history. We'll tidy this all up a bit later. There's much better way of doing all this stuff. I just want to show you how we can get it up and running. So that should be fine. And then what we can do quickly, so we'll put this all just in line over here quickly. So what we'll do is we'll say for each item in the conversation, and we'll just go ahead and we'll just print out the user, and then we'll print out the message over here as well. Okay, and the other thing we're going to want is an edit form. So we'll just put this over here, and we're going to want some input text. And what we shall do is we'll bind this to the search model. So on here, we just say the edit context, sorry. And then we can bind this value to search text. And then we'll just add a submit button over here quickly. And then we'll go ahead and we'll style all of this stuff nicely in a minute, so I'll show you how we can do that. Okay, oh sorry, yeah, this actually needs to be the model. Okay, there we go. And then what we want to do is say on the form submit, we want to on validate submit, we want to call our method. Let's just call that search for now. Okay, then that should hopefully print out what we want. Okay, the next thing we need to do is when we're searching, we want to add to this conversation. So we could do this here, but what I'm going to do is just go to this class over here, and we're just going to add a method on here. And what we'll do is we'll take in the user and the message, and we'll just say conversation history.add new conversation item, and then we can set what we need to over here. Message equals message. Yeah, then if we go back to our chat, because what we need to do over here is every time we send a message, what we want to do is go conversation, add item, and I'm just going to call this user for now. And the message that we're sending will be the search model dot search text. The other thing we need to do is for the message request, we'll say message request dot add a new message. This is going to be the role. Actually, we can just copy one of these. This will be a new message. The role will be user. This is going to be us, and that will be our search text that we're sending through. Let's just correct this quickly. What have I got wrong here? Let's start a bracket over here. There we go. Okay, and then we just take all these messages and we pass them through. I think what we'll do as well quickly is I'm just going to on here hard code the system context. We'll just set this to you are a helpful assistant. And I'll actually grab some context that I've done on one of my other demos just so we can have a bit of a play with it. And I'll set the assistant context equal to that. All right. I think that should be enough for us to have a quick run. Let's give that a test. Okay, so that's starting up. Right, let's give this a test. So what I should be able to do now is essentially just say, how can I solve my issue? And it will know that we're talking about the SMTP server. So let's give that a go. Submit that. Doesn't look very pretty at the moment, but I think that is working. Yeah, so you can see it's trying to tell us how to resolve our problem. Okay, perfect. Now the next thing we want to do is just append, every time we get back a response, we want to append the context to the existing context. So if we, underneath here, once we've got everything, we can just say search model dot assistant context, and we'll just append the last item that we got back from the conversation history. Oh, this is pretty unwieldy, this, but we'll tidy that up in a minute. And then the next time we come through, we should be able to, let's just test that quickly. How do I solve my issue? And then what we should be able to do is ask it about how to solve number 2 or 3. How do I check point 2? Oh, if I could spell. So point 2 is about, oh, let's try something else maybe point 4. checkpoint 4. Yeah, so that's working. It knows what we're talking about. All right, perfect. Let's stop that. Okay, so I think the first thing we can tackle, there's a lot to do here, but I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and what we'll do is we'll create a component for rendering out the actual response, and then we'll get it to take the markdown or whatever text ChatGPT returns, and we'll convert that into nice looking HTML so that it displays nicely on the page for us. So what I'm going to do is create a new folder here called components. And then in here, what I'm going to do is create a new item, new Razor component, and we'll call this conversation. And then in here, we can render everything that we want to do. So in order to use components, you need to be able to bind properties to them. So what we can do in this conversation over here is we would add a property. What we want to pass into it is the current conversation we've got over here. So what we can do, if we make a property for this, sorry, conversation. Yeah, I'll tell you what, this is a bad name for it actually, because I've named my other class conversation. Let's just call this conversation view. There we go, right. And then in order to make it a property that you can bind to, what you need to do is just make it a parameter. So we'll set parameter on there. I'll just set a div over here and just say hello. And then what you can do now is if we go back to the chat, so instead of having all this code in here, what we can do is we can say conversation view. You can see it's coming up. Let's just get rid of this and import the namespace rather. There we go. And then you can see it's erroring now because it's, there we go. And then what we need to set is the conversation, which will just be our conversation item here. So we can set that. And then we can pretty much just take this code here and we'll take it and we'll put it into our view over here. And we'll just change this to, oh, it's already referencing the conversation already. So that's fine. And then let's just give that a test. We'll beat that up. I might just leave this running actually while we're working. That should look exactly as we had it before. It's always best to break your stuff down into components, otherwise you'll end up with quite a messy view, which is quite hard to follow. I'm just going to type something random in there. Yeah, that's working. Okay. So that's our conversation view. Right, now what we want to do is obviously make it look a lot nicer than it's looking at the moment. So one of the things with Razor as well, if you're not aware of it, is it does a very good CSS isolation. So in order to take advantage of that, what you need to do is, I'm going to stop this because it's not working. If you add a CSS file with the same name as your razorview.css, then it picks that up, and I'll show you in a second. It's all scoped to that component, which is nice. So you're not getting your CSS leaking between components and randomly changing styles everywhere. Okay, perfect. Now, rather than writing all the CSS, I've got a bit of an example previously that I've done, so I'm pretty much going to copy and paste all of that stuff from here just to keep this a bit easier. But essentially what we're doing is we're defining a conversation area, a conversation item, and then we have a AI reply. So depending on whether it's the user or the AI, it will just have a slightly different background color. And then if we go back into here, again, I'm going to copy and paste some markup I've already got for this, just for the essence of time. It's pretty much what we've got. We'll have to just tweak a few things. So basically what we've got is we've got our div. We need let's just put this conversation on here. I'll call that conversation history. It will go through, and then this is where we need to convert the markdown into HTML. So in order to do that, there's a NuGet package that we need to reference. If we go over here, there's a nice NuGet package called Markdown. So they've done a lot of awesome work in here to allow us to do this. So if we install this package, and then there's another package that we need to install as well, which will allow, it builds upon Markdown and adds all the syntax highlighting for us. So we'll add this Markdown extensions.syntax highlighting. So we'll install that as well. Accept. Okay, cool. So then the next step is to just make use of that. So I'm going to be copying and pasting bits and pieces of code from some other demos I've done just in the essence of time. So we're going to make a function over here called render HTML content. Now what that will do is it will take the Markdown and it will render HTML for us. So what we need is a using statement. So we just say using Markdown. That should then correct that for us. And then this is another library we need as well, which is in the color code. So if we just save that quickly. Oh, there's just a little error over here. This needs to be called conversation view. Right, there we go. And if we go back here, cool. So we've got our render HTML function. So what that does is it uses the Markdown library. It's got a toHTML method where we pass in the contents. And then it's got a pipeline which you can define, which is where you can use different extensions that it supports. So what we're doing over here is we're saying use syntax highlighting, which is coming from this code coloring library. So if we do that, save it, we should probably be able to run this now, and that will do the gist of what we want. So let's give that a go. Okay, let me try and do something like write me a C# class that adds to numbers. Hopefully that will produce some code for us. So yes, I can see it is doing it. We obviously need to go work on all the rest of the styling, but that looks pretty good, and you can see it's doing the highlighting, all the code's looking good. Right, so what we'll do is we'll stop that, and that is pretty much the basics of that. We'll come back to this component in a minute. The other thing we need to get this component to do is to auto scroll. So as we're getting more content, just to scroll down. But we'll come back to that in a minute. So for now, let's go back to the chat page. Again, what we're going to do is add a CSS file for this one. So we'll add a new item over here called chat.razor.css. And again, I'm going to be copying and pasting a whole bunch of styles, so we're not sitting here trying to play around with it. Again, I'll just paste those in. So we've got a few elements here. We just got a chat container, which is the main container. We got the chat area, and then we've got, we'll find this in a minute, we've got the chat and then an input area where we're going to put the input box. So if we go back into the chat view as well, what we're going to need to do is just define these areas. So we've essentially got a div, which is our main area. Let's just move that in. So we've got our div, and then we've got an area where we're going to have our chat, which will be over here. And if you want, I'm going to, yeah, this is all in source in GitHub, so you guys can go over there and just grab all the styles and stuff if you want. Cool, so that should be the basics of that, and then we need the input area. So we've got the chats, and then within the chat we're going to have our input area. I'm going to copy and paste these divs over here for us. Okay, and the conversation view is within the chat over here. Just space this all out a bit. Right, let's give that a quick run. I think that should hopefully have the colors correct. Cool, yes, I can see we've got correct backgrounds over here, which is good. I think what I'll do in a second is just go and hard code this in, just so that we don't have to be typing this every time. Add two numbers. It's just I wanted to generate us some code so we can see the syntax highlighting. Yeah, that's looking okay. So that is working. The reason it's not showing it in a little code block is because we need to set the system context to tell it to do so. But that looks better. We can at least read that now. So if we stop that. So what I'm going to do quickly is just set the system context over here. So what we're telling it is that it's a code generator and it should use Markdown. And when it does produce Markdown, it should include the language in the Markdown. And then just don't give any descriptions, code only, although it doesn't seem to quite listen to that yet, but we'll come back to this in a minute. Another thing, let's just set the assistant context as well. We'll just hard code this for now, just so that while we're testing, it's a bit simpler for us. We don't have to keep constantly going back and forth. So we'll just whack that in there quickly. Let's just run that one more time quick. Oh, I just realized I've done this incorrectly actually. What we want to do, rather than setting that, I wanted to just set the search text so we don't have to type that every time. There we go. Right, let's try that one more time. Okay, perfect. So now, yeah, that's pre-populated, so I should just be able to click submit, and then that's going to go off, and there we go. You see now it's actually producing the nice highlighted code for us. Cool. So that's the basics of that done. I think the next thing we should look at is styling this input. Let's move this into a component, style that. And then I think what we might do is call it a day for today, and then we'll continue with this in the next episode, and we'll add the system context. We'll have a look at adding all the audio recording and adding all the images. Yeah, so let's go ahead quickly and add another component. We'll call this chat input. So we'll add a new Razor component. We'll call this chat input. And again, let's just go ahead and add a CSS file for this as well. So chat input.razor.css. Add that in. Perfect. Cool. Now again, I'm going to do a bit of a magic copy and paste exercise just to save us some time. There was quite a lot to styling this when I've done it, so I'm going to copy and paste this. This will all be on GitHub, so you can just go and grab this if you want and then tweak it as you find fit. So if we go into this chat input again, what we'll do, I'm going to just copy and paste this over here. So essentially what we're doing is we've got a form and then we've got various buttons. For now, what I'm going to do is just remove the buttons that we're not using. So we don't have images and microphone. Let's just get rid of that and keep it simple for now. And then what we're going to need in this, so on our chat page at present, we want to replicate this, and we're currently binding to the search model. So we want to take this search model into our component. So how we do that is we go over here and we add another parameter for the search model. We can just bring in the model for that. That will work. And then the other thing we're going to need to do, because now that we're in a component, we need to know when they click this button. So in order to do that, we need to have an event callback. Now what we can do is, again, it's another parameter. You define another parameter and you make it an event callback. So we'll make this, where's the form? Over here. So we'll set that. Let's just tidy this up a little bit here quickly. That's going to bind to the search model. That's correct. We'll get rid of this. We could do this actually. I'll tell you what, let's do this while we're here. So what we want to do is disable that button whilst it's processing so that they're not clicking it multiple times. So we're going to add a isBusy flag on here. And then we'll set this from the chat model as well. Cool, so that should be hopefully that up and running. And then if we go back to the chat, what we're going to need to do now is rather than having this whole edit form here, we'll just say chat input. We'll do that. What we need to specify is our search model, which will be this. So we'll say that's search model. The other thing we want to do is on text completion submitted, we want to handle that. So rather than calling it over here, we'll call the same thing, but just from this event handler. And then the last thing is we had this is busy flag. So I think for the time being, I'm just going to declare it over here. We just need a is busy. We'll set that to false initially. Oh, sorry. Is busy false. We can do the same thing here. Just set that. Let's do this quickly, and that, and then we should be able to get rid of this. And then let's give that a go. So we'll run that quickly. Okay, perfect. So that's up and running. Yeah, we got our text box. You see we've got a button. Let's just see if it works. So if we click that, yeah, it's fired off the event and everything's still working as we wanted. We'll go and sort out all this spacing and stuff. We could actually do that now quickly. Maybe do that and then call it a day for today. So if we close this, I think what we'll do is just go to, I think it's just on the main page. If I can find it, here we go, main layout. Yeah, I think let's just get rid of this main for now. Actually, let's just run it and we'll debug and just sort that out quickly. Let's get that looking decent, and then that's not a bad start. We can at least type our queries in and it renders it quite nicely for us. Oh, no, that's not looking good. 1 second, let me just grab this quickly. Okay, cool. So I'm just having a look what I've done previously to get this. I don't want to bore you guys with messing around with CSS. But I think if we leave that a quick and dirty little hack, we should probably put that in CSS, but that will allow the overflow. And then what we want to do is just get rid of this margin around the edges. I think that should do what we want for now. Okay, so that's still not quite right. We'll leave that running quickly. I think actually, what I've done last time, let's just get rid of this. Just make this a div for now. And I think if we go back, just try to refresh that. Oh, there we go. Cool. So yeah, now we full screen. Oh, so there was one thing we missed actually on here. So what we need to do is every time we do a new request, just so that the styling works correctly, we need to set the user. So if we set the user to AI, which is what I think we set on the Razor view, let's just double check. Yes, if the user is AI, then it styles it slightly differently. So if we go back to here, so we go back to the chat page, and then we'll say, yeah, for the AI, what we'll do is we'll just add a new empty item. And then what it does while it's streaming the data is it will just append to the last item in here. We'll go and tidy this up and make it a bit nicer data. But I think if we restart that quickly, then just test that one more time, and then we'll be done. All right, perfect. So that's loaded up. Yeah, that looks a bit better. Send that through. Ah, there we go. Perfect. Yeah, so we see our text and the AI's responses are slightly different background colors, and then they separate it so it generates the code correctly. Let's just test this out. I'm going to add a subtract method. Send that through. So you can see at the moment it's not auto scrolling. That's the next thing we'll do as well. There we go. It's gone and it's added our subtract method. Cool. So I think that's all for today. Catch you on the next one. Cheers, guys. Bye.